Gunfire echoes across a cotton field. A soldier falls, clutching his leg. In agony, he's rolled into a makeshift hospital under sway of drums and dust. The doctor leans down, not just to patch the wound, but to inject relief, a dark liquid, opium-based. In that act begins a story of pain, hope, and dependency. This is not just surgery in wartime. This is America's first opioid crisis, born of battlefield medicine and unleashed in civilian life. Before we begin, like and subscribe to help preserve these stories of courage.
Battlefields and the birth of pain relief.
When the American Civil War erupted in 1861, surgeons on both sides faced the unthinkable. Shattered limbs, gangrene, rampant disease. They had few weapons besides bandages, bullets, and one especially potent tool, opium and its derivatives. On battlefields and in hospitals, opium, laudanum, and morphine became indispensable. One Confederate medical handbook declared, "Opium is the one indispensable drug on the battlefield, important to the surgeon as gunpowder to the ordnance." This was not exaggeration. Doctors had long used opiates for pain, coughs, and dysentery, but war changed everything. The sheer volume of wounded, the speed of wounds, the need for relief, these forced medicine into overdrive. Hypodermic syringes emerged. Injectable morphine offered immediate relief. Sisters and surgeons stood amid cries and blasts, and a syringe in the arm became as routine as cleaning a wound. For the soldier, it meant escape from agony. For the hospital, it meant survival of the patient. But for the nation, it introduced a threshold. Pain relief turned into dependence. As the war dragged on, more quietly, a crisis grew. Wounded men healed and returned home, not always healed themselves. They carried within them the residue of relief, too deep to shed. In that smoky ward, beneath gas-lit tents, the nation planted a seed of healing, yes, but also of addiction. The question then becomes, how does a country treat its wounded when the medicine itself becomes part of the wound?
From battlefield relief to civilian prescription.
In the war's aftermath, the syringe did not vanish. It traveled home. The techniques used to ease acute battlefield pain spread into clinics, homes, and pharmacies across America. Surgeons returned to civilian life, and along with them came hypodermic needles and morphine injections, once reserved for war wounds. Doctors adopted these tools for everyday ailments, pain, coughs, diarrhea, insomnia. The era of easy opiates began. Patients accepted the injections, the tablets, the tinctures. They trusted their doctors. Yet the medical community did not fully understand how deeply dependence could root itself. By the 1870s and 1880s, the number of prescriptions soared. The availability of injectable morphine became widespread. What started as compassionate care began to blur into chronic use. Veterans who once received morphine for their injuries now found themselves caught in a cycle of relief and reliance. Addiction remained poorly defined. Language like opium slavery or morphine mania surfaced. Society regarded it as moral weakness rather than medical condition. The very drug that saved lives now haunted survivors. The battlefield may have ended, but for many Americans, the battle with opiates had just begun. As the influx of prescriptions climbed, the nation's first real opioid crisis quietly took shape. In the next scene, we explore how this crisis moved from personal suffering into public awareness, and how veterans, doctors, and families responded.
Veterans' wounds and the hidden crisis.
For the men who fought, the war's end did not mean the end of suffering. Many returned home with limbs missing, nerves shattered, chronic pain lingering. Their prescriptions for opiates increased. Hospitals released wounded veterans. Doctors prescribed morphine for pain, antimicrobials scarce, options limited. The pill bottle became a constant companion. The social cost was high. Some veterans became what the period called opium slaves. They lived on the margins. Their families watched helplessly. Medical records, letters, and asylum files reveal broken lives, ruined reputations, bodies worn by addiction. In many cases, the addiction did not begin with indulgence, but began with healing. And healing turned into dependency. The stigma was fierce. Addiction was seen as personal failure, not consequence of medicine. Veterans struggled to access support. Pension laws and medical systems were unprepared. Even as the nation honored its war heroes, it ignored a hidden war within. The first wave of a national epidemic brewed quietly. The transformation from soldier to civilian did not shield them. The tools meant to heal became the yoke that bound. In the next scene, we'll follow how the medical profession and society began to recognize the crisis, though too late for many.
Medicine, innovation, and addiction.
The hypodermic syringe appeared in the 1850s, but wartime need made it common. By the 1870s, virtually all American physicians had adopted the tool. With it came injectable morphine, quick, powerful, new. Doctors and companies saw profit. Patients saw relief. In the rush, the danger was overlooked. Pharmacies and catalogs sold opiates widely. One veteran admitted purchasing morphine by mail and continuing for decades. The innovation that saved limbs and lives also opened pathways to long-term addiction. Medical literature began to record cases, but understanding lagged. The concept of addiction as disease was yet to mature. Women, too, were swept up. Domestic medicines, tonics containing laudanum and opium, once marketed for cramps or sleeplessness, fed the dependence. The frontier of medicine had expanded, but its boundaries of risk remained invisible. The first national wave of opioid use was underway. Innovation and oversight moved at different speeds. The syringe brought power, policy brought delay. In the next scene, we'll examine society's attempt to respond and the limits of that response.
Public health awakens and legal awakenings.
By the 1880s and 1890s, public health communities started to notice the toll. Newspapers reported morphine habit among veterans, middle-class women, ordinary citizens. Medical journals reflected regret. States passed laws restricting import or sale of opiates. The Harrison Narcotics Tax Act of 1914 would be decades away, but awareness began here. The roots of modern opioid regulation trace to these years. Society realized the relief offered by medicine carried risk. Veterans' hospitals offered treatment. Asylums admitted men labeled morphinists, but resources were scant. Blame often fell on the addicted rather than the system that enabled them. The national crisis remained unrecognized for years. This era reminds us that medicine and society are entwined. The same tools that heal also harm when unchecked. In the next and final scene, we consider the legacy, how the Civil War-era opioid crisis reflects modern times, and what meaning it holds.
Echoes and lessons from soldiers to a nation.
The crisis didn't stop with the 19th century. What began in hospitals and battlefields extended into American history and public health. The pattern repeated: pain relief, wide use, dependence, delayed recognition. The story of Civil War medicine echoes today. Thousands of veterans, civilians, doctors were part of the first wave. They taught the lesson: medical innovation requires ethics, regulation, compassion. The term soldier's disease emerged. Historians estimate that by 1890, several 100,000 Americans were addicted, many veterans. The roots of modern opioid epidemics lie deep. The challenge remains: balancing relief with risk, healing with awareness. The past shows us the blueprint. It warns us that pain relief ungoverned becomes plague. In the next scene, we reflect on individual stories, memory, and what confronting history can teach.
Remembrance and the path forward.
Here on the threshold of modern medicine we stand. The first chapter of America's opioid crisis was written in gun smoke and field tents. The men who walked from the battlefield carried more than scars. They carried a nation's unresolved pain. Their story rarely told, yet essential. As we honor their memory, we must also look ahead. Medicine must learn from history. Policy must answer pain with both care and caution. Veterans must be supported and their battles remembered. The crisis of relief can become crisis of dependence if ignored. We leave the tents behind and step into clinics, homes, streets. The weapon that healed also wounded. The question remains: will we heal responsibly? Will the lessons of 1865 echo in our care of 2025? The answer lies in remembrance, awareness, and resolve. Their legacy endures, and with your support, their stories will too. Like, subscribe, and stand with those who remember.